Support comes from Hampton Roads Community Foundation, partnering with donors from all walks of life to improve southeastern Virginia through grants, scholarships, and leadership initiatives. Learn more at hamptonroadscf.org.
Hello, everyone. I'm Barbara Ham-Lee. Today marks the beginning of year 15 of Another View on the Radio. Thank you, listeners and members of WHRO Public Media, for your support. On today's Another View, political and legal analyst Dr. Claville unpacks the details of President Trump's One Big Beautiful Bill and how this new law will impact our everyday lives. He'll also talk about the latest Supreme Court rulings and how all of this relates to the Project 2025 agenda. Another View is next, right after this national, regional, and local news from NPR and WHRO News.
Discussing today's topics from an African-American perspective, this is Another View.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Another View. I'm Barbara Ham-Lee. It's great to be back after taking some time off to celebrate my birthday. Special thanks to producer Lisa Godley and the rest of the AV team for holding things down in my absence. And before we get into our great conversation with one of our most prolific guests that we have.
It's a lot of pressure.
Exactly. No pressure, Eric, right? Let me tell you a couple of things that are going on in the area that I think you may be interested in. Starting with Teens with a Purpose. As we know, there is such a strong organization that works with young people and helps them to stay focused and to follow their dreams. And they're holding Fuse Fest. Now, Fuse stands for Focus, Unity, Spirit, and Entertainment. Or edutainment, actually. Thank you. And their Fuse Fest this year is this Saturday, July the 12th. It's from noon until 6. The rain date is Sunday the 13th. And it is a celebration of Norfolk urban life. It is the theme this year is Unseen to Unstoppable. So I love that theme. And everyone is invited. It is open to the general public. It's going to be held at Purpose Park, 801 Church Street in Norfolk from noon until 6 p.m. And Fuse Fest, transforming community, celebrating and honoring its people and its culture. So come on out, support the young folks, and have a great time. Also want to remind you again, and I believe Lisa did talk about this with you last week, the City of Norfolk, Project ORF, and City of Norfolk Community Services Board and Project ORF, Surviving Through Mental Health Family Matters. So they want you all to come for a mental health and wellness event, the Evening of Connection and Healing, to educate on how stressors can show up across generations and how to collaborate as a community to bring healing, resilience, support, and understanding. Now, this is a week from today, next Thursday, July the 17th. It is from 5 until 9 p.m. at Chrysler Hall on St. Paul's Boulevard in Norfolk. There will be mental health and wellness resources, community support programs, special guest panelists, food and refreshments, and a lot of other things. And it is free. It is open to everyone. There's complimentary parking, so there is no excuse for not being able to go and to learn to survive through mental health family matters. If you want to know more, you can go to norfolk.gov/surviving through mental health. And I hope that you will take advantage of these free opportunities that help all of us to have a stronger community. And then finally, Allison Moore, who is one of the members of our roundtable here at Another View, she is putting on a camp for students from grades 4 until 12. It runs from July 21st through August 9th, and it is called the More Laughing Arts and Media Camp. And I have the honor of serving as one of the camp leaders on journalism, and so that should be a lot of fun. Hands-on training in comedy, journalism, interviewing, media production, video editing, art and prop design, and hosting. And it's going to end with an episode of More Laughing in the Morning that airs on Sky 4, and also a red carpet showcase on August 9th at 2 o'clock, which will be open to the public at the American Theater. And this is just to give kids a creative outlet and to spend some quality time. And so you can sign your kids up still, and there are scholarships available. So if you are interested, please go to MLAMcamp.com to register or to learn more. That's MLAMcamp.com. So lots going on in our area. Take advantage of it. So President Trump and those who support the bill call it the one big beautiful bill. And while those who oppose it may call it one ugly bill, Eric Claville, our political analyst, our legal analyst, really, you could call it both, depending on where you fall.
Absolutely.
In this bill. How you doing, first of all?
I'm doing well this wonderful morning here, and happy birthday to you as well.
Thank you. I appreciate that. So this is our 15th year. We're beginning on the radio. Isn't that fabulous?
It is. And look, it's a true blessing. You are a blessing to this community.
Oh, thank you.
Persons across the country, my family included.
That's right. I got my Louisiana group down there. That's right.
That's right. They're tuning in right now, as a matter of fact. But everybody tunes in. Such a wealth of just knowledge that comes from this show, and diverse knowledge as well. So definitely, you are a true gem.
Oh, thank you very much. All right, let's talk about this thing. Let's unpack this bill. First of all, it passed on the 4th of July, so that was the deadline that the president had requested, and then Congress made it happen.
Yeah.
Now, I pulled the press release from the website. Okay. And I just want to read a couple of things that it says about what it says very specifically. Yeah. Here's what this means for everyday Americans.
And Barbara, which website are you getting that from?
From the White House website. Right. Okay.
Well, so
thank you for that. Yes. I pulled this directly from the official White House website. And it says, and I'm reading verbatim here, here's what this means for everyday Americans. 1, the largest tax cut in history for middle and working class Americans. 2, according to the Joint Committee on Taxation, the tax bill will benefit workers and families making less than most benefit workers and families making less than $50,000 per year. Next one says bigger paychecks of $10,000 or more in annual take-home pay for families. No tax on tips, no tax on overtime, no tax on Social Security, a $12.5 billion modernization of our air traffic control system, permanently increasing the child tax credit for more than 40 million families, permanently securing our borders by finishing the border wall and hiring thousands of new ICE officers and Border Patrol agents, driving down energy costs with the massive expansion of domestic oil and gas production capacity, a tax deduction on Made in America auto loan interest, protection for 2 million family farms from punitive double taxation, creating Trump accounts for every American newborn, restoring financial sanity by cutting $1.5 trillion in spending, strengthening Medicaid by eliminating waste, fraud, and abuse, and blocking illegal immigrants from receiving Medicaid, funding the Golden Dome missile defense system to confront 21st century threats, and modernizing our military to ensure it has the resources to be a ready, lethal fighting force after 4 years of Biden-era weakness. So that's what's on there.
Right.
I've heard most of this. I didn't know anything about that $10,000. Where did that come from?
Right. So let's take a look at the one big beautiful bill. This is my analysis of it,
okay,
and then I'll go to some sources that we're taking a look at.
Okay.
For my analysis and how public policy works, how bills are created, they're introduced into Congress, they're then debated across the floor in committees. You have various research groups within Congress that research the impact of it, various provisions. Legislators or congresspersons talk amongst themselves to see what's the best opportunity for everyone across the board. Of course, everyone's not going to get everything that they want,
right?
But at the end of the day, the impact upon the overall American budget should be minimum modest at 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 best, right?
Okay.
With this particular bill, according to, and I'm quoting Lisa Murkowski, U.S. Senator out
From
of Alaska. She was ashamed of how this went through. This was a bill that did not go through the process. There were many individuals that were worried about. It was pushed down the throats of many congresspersons. It didn't go through the proper process. And in my opinion, in my analysis of this, not opinion, but analysis, this is one of the most irresponsible pieces of legislation that's going to impact generations for decades to come that was passed in Congress, because it did not go through the proper process and really see how this is going to negatively affect.
What parts of the process were missing?
Well, first of all, it was a false deadline that was set by the White House. Of course, we wanted to sign it on 4th of July, and I get it. It's ceremonial, and you had the flyover and fireworks and the like. However, when the House members, when they passed it, over 20 House members wrote a letter to the Senate, said, please don't pass this provision. I mean, we passed it unanimously on the Republican side, but please don't pass certain provisions. And there were also various congresspersons like Marjorie Greene that were asked about certain provisions, and she said, well, I didn't know that was in there. Well, you're supposed to read the bill.
So if
before you pass
Congress
it.
people don't even know what's in the bill, that's scary.
Right. It is. And again, I'm quoting directly from these individuals that actually passed this particular bill. So this is nothing that's made up. So with that being the case, of course, on the Democratic side, the Democrats stayed locked in and voted against it. And of course, the minority leader of the House actually did a record speech talking about the various bill. I watched about 3-4 hours of it for it. So, with that, it shows that this is going to have a negative impact. I want to read from the Committee for Responsible Federal Budget, and then we'll address some of the
specifics.
here.
Okay.
But the Committee for a Responsible Federal Budget is an article that says a dark day for our fiscal future. And again, we're talking about the fiscal health, not various provisions, but fiscal health. It says this bill would be the most expensive reconciliation bill in history, adding $4.1 trillion to the national debt through 2034. Now, if its temporary provisions are extended permanently, that total will rise to $5.5 trillion. Now, under this bill, as is written, and this is what was signed into law, the national debt will rise from 100% of the economy today to 127% by 2034. Now, with this, of course, a lot of the provisions. Now, again, conservatives talk about being fiscal hawks.
That was just what I was getting ready to say, because the Conservative Party supposedly is all about smaller government and being fiscally responsible, right?
Well, they are getting smaller government that they want, with these draconian cuts that again are not going through a proper process. Of course, a lot of the, I would say, the campaign language of eliminating waste, fraud, and abuse, abuse. In order to really, if you're running a company, if you want to eliminate waste, fraud, and abuse, you do a study of where the impact is, where the waste is, where monies are not being spent, where things are being carried forward, where programs can be basically streamlined or more efficient. As opposed to saying, okay, let's just cut 20% of y'all, go home. Lock them out of their computers and things of that nature. Okay, let's cut, $9 trillion from here. Or as the White House is doing now, going over Congress's authority, withholding $7 billion from after-school programs and after-school lunches, right?
Yeah.
So is that eliminating waste, fraud, and abuse, or is that abusing power and punishing individuals that should not be punished?
All right, let's talk about some of the specifics. I know Medicaid is a huge one that has been all over the news, but because our show has a very specific slant in that we're looking at the particular impact upon the Black community, but this is impacting anyone who's on Medicaid.
Absolutely.
Talk a little bit about what it actually means, because if you read what the press release says, it sounds like the only persons that will be impacted are those who are not true citizens.
Right.
illegal immigrants, as they call them.
Yeah. And of course, there's documentation purposes. Of course, anybody goes to the hospital or very hospitals, they're treated, right? Now, when they get a bill or whether they can pay or not, that's determined through various policies, paperwork, and the like. However, when you talk about the cuts that are happening across Medicaid, it's $1 trillion. And primarily that's focused on the Affordable Care Act and individuals that states that accepted funding to expand Medicaid to include to basically provide health care for citizens that didn't have health care. States saw the impact of that. It was tremendous, where you had a healthier society,
So people could go to work, so that they could do
absolutely,
be productive citizens and so forth.
Absolutely. So this is more of retribution for the Obama administration than anything else. Now, keep in mind, the states that are going to be impacted the most are primarily the poorest and red states. Arkansas, Louisiana, Alabama, Mississippi, states like that, Kentucky, West Virginia, Florida and Texas are going to be impacted because of their populations as well. But they're voting primarily against their own interests because of that.
But for what to what end? I mean, the thing I can't understand, I get wanting to do these tax cuts so that your big rich folks can be happy.
Right.
Okay. But why do it on the backs of those that can least afford to have this happen to them?
Well,
because ultimately, when you go to if you're on Medicaid and you go to the doctor and you don't have insurance anymore, and I have insurance, ultimately I'm going to wind up paying for it one way or the other because the premiums are going to go up, or services won't be as quick, and so there's all kinds of impact.
Exactly. And when we talk about the various ways where this is going to impact us, this is a false trickle down economics theory in which this bill was passed. You had Mike Johnson saying, "Oh, this is going to increase economic output," so forth and so on. I mean, that's just it's spot as false as it is, as left is right and right is left. It is not going to do that. We saw that was a false theory that was created during the Reagan administration to sell those cuts and privatize federal government, and it's still false. Who this bill basically benefits the most are corporations, top 10% of the population that have wealth, of course, corporations and the like. Now, when you look at the tax breaks about the higher 40% level, all the way up to, of course, the top 1%, but really the bottom 60% of those that are going to really suffer the most. When you talk about increased taxes, increased premiums for health insurance, because again, if individuals don't have health care, some have to be treated. They have to be treated. That's going to increase costs.
Is CHIP included in this also? That's the child version, basically.
Absolutely. Medicaid covers those individuals that cannot basically afford health care or at a certain level of income. So that's what Medicaid, not Medicare,
right?
Which is for elderly 65. I think it's 65. Yeah,
for folks like me.
Right. But again, our citizens that definitely earned it. So, so that's what that covers. However, there's also another $300 million cut through supplemental nutrition program.
Yes, SNAP. Yeah, then that's for basically people used to call it food stamps, but
food stamps. But it also affects individuals who are disabled, disability as well, commodities and the like. Don't forget the $550 million that was held back or cut from funding that would help our food banks. That was held back as well, in addition to the $7 billion that's being held back currently for after-school programs and after-school lunches for kids. I want to talk about those after-school programs. Our sons went to before-school after-school program. They loved it because they got to be with their friends and the like, and so forth and so on. And of course, they got a chance to do their homework. And with that, there they also provide before school meals. They have lunch, and then you have after school meals. A lot of kids, that backpack they take home with them with those
have
food in it.
Yeah,
that's the only meal, balanced meal that they're going to have for dinner at that particular night. And of course it's held during the summertime as well. You take those meals away, you're going to now impact the nutrition of those families because food costs are also rising. We'll talk about the immigration raids that ICE are ramping up as well, where at first farmers, they were raiding farms where you have migrant workers that come
Until
in.
the big farms started complaining about it, and then
Before I started complaining.
saying that we don't have anybody to collect our
Right, food.
the food.
Right,
so,
because this is a process that for decades we've had migrant workers come and work farmlands. Now it was basically it's a yo-yo. The White House said we'll put an amnesty on it. Then a few days later said no amnesty. The Secretary for Agriculture said that no, we're going to continue those raids, and made a statement saying that we can get healthy people who can work out there. I think they quoted like 34 million people. So again, you have these old false tropes that persons believe that there are people just at home
sitting around waiting just to take advantage of these.
Right.
And the thing that I think that people don't understand too, Eric, is those who don't receive these types of services because they're blessed enough to make enough money and so forth. I don't think they really have a realistic understanding of how much money we're talking about. Yep. It's not like these people are sitting at home eating bonbons. The average SNAP payment is $189.
Right.
I challenge anybody listening right now to go to the grocery store and carry $189 for the month.
Yeah, it's right.
For the month.
Yeah.
That's a lot.
Absolutely.
I mean, that's a lot to expect someone to do with the price of food and so forth now.
Absolutely. So when you talk about that, according to just 3 hours ago, CNBC said that Trump's Big Beautiful Bill cuts food stamps for millions. The average family may lose about $146 per month. And when you talk about the rising cost of food, this could impact about 22.3 million families. Again, according to CNBC. Again, just looking at just the raw numbers through here. So, again, let's see. The CBO estimated that the changes in the Senate plan would cut SNAP funding by about 20% or $186 billion through 2034. And again, I mean, that's a lot of money. So it's going to impact people across the board.
Now, the thing too, not everything in the bill goes into effect immediately. Correct. And the Medicare change is one of those that does not happen until 2027.
Yeah, 27, and then states have until 2028 to start helping to pay SNAP benefits, but they'll probably become more aggressive a little sooner. So there is a phase in, very similar to, and again, the initial House bill was $300 million to SNAP. The Senate reconciliation wanted $86 billion. I wanted to make that correction. But when we talk about phase in the cuts, let's look at student loans. Let's look at Department of Education, right? Because this is because
that's going to change too.
Right. This is attack on education itself. So, with, of course, the federal student loan program, you borrow X amount of dollars to go to school, pay it back, or you have various forgiveness programs that are there. Now, these changes start on the in fall or July 2026. So
a year from now.
Right. So students that were accepted into universities now and starting the fall or the spring are going to be under the old rules until you finish your program, including those that started before this bill. So you're under the old rules. However, when the new rules start, loan limits are increased, are actually decreased, and then, of course, programs are eliminated. Graduate Plus loans are going to be eliminated itself. This allows graduate students to borrow up to the cost of attendance. July 2026, no more would that be available. Graduate and professional student borrowing caps, new caps of $100,000 lifetime for graduate students. That's from master's to PhD.
So you can't become a doctor off of that.
Well, for professional students, which are MDs, JDs, and so forth, are, of course, dentists and the like, $200,000 lifetime. Parent Plus loan program is capped at $65,000 per student. All right. And of course, there are some elimination of deferred options, such as unemployment, economic hardship deferments are eliminated. leaving only standard forbearance as the sole option to pause any payments. Now, what this also does, you have fewer repayment options. Of course, under the Obama program, the Biden program, you had the SAVE plan and so forth. But now it's only two. You have standard repayment with fixed rates up to 30 years, and then you have some that are income driven that's phased in 5, 10, 15, 20, 25 years, depending on what your income is. And that's it. That is it. Now, what this does is this actually pushes individuals toward more risky and stringent private loans, right? So, so when you take a look at what's happening, these are real. So to your point, this is phased in July 2026, but then from there, what ends up happening is that those programs are eliminated at that particular time.
At that time.
Yep.
If you're just joining us, we're talking with political and legal analyst Dr. Eric Claville about the impact of Trump administration actions in America and around the world. Call us with your questions, 757-440-2665 or 1-800-940-2240 to join our conversation. The numbers again, 757-440-2665 or 1-800-940-2240. So programs like if you are a firefighter, a teacher, those types, will those loans will they be still forgiven after 10 years?
Right.
Or?
So that's called a public service loan forgiveness program. Under I think the House bill is eliminated. I think the Senate bill brought it back. So it's still there, but it's more stringent in certain provisions. So it's still there, but it's not going to be the old plan that we had before.
Okay. When we think about
very quickly also.
Just
came out yesterday, I believe it was, individuals under the Biden SAVE plan, interest will now start because of the legal cases. So we've had a lot of legal challenges with different provisions. So under the court legal ruling, now the SAVE plan interest will start because it was paused. And then they're encouraging individuals to enroll in one of the new repayment plans under the Department of Education that are there. So August 1st, as they would say, the juice starts again, right? So that was something that was part of yesterday.
Wow. Let's talk about ICE for a minute because the budget was tremendously increased.
Absolutely.
To support ICE. When we look at what happened in Los Angeles, recently the ICE being in the parks, going to the farms, things of that nature. What does this bill now allow ICE to do? Is this just going to ramp this whole thing up even more?
Right. So according to the bill that was passed, they provided nearly $30 billion to expand enforcement, deportation operations to U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement, which is, of course, known as ICE. Now, this actually triples its 2024 annual budget. All right, so what this actually does, it basically provides these individuals who are under this new who are in this office and expanding it as well to ramp up their actions. Now, there was a cap. There was a request. I would say request, but a directive for ICE to have at least 1,000 individuals. I think it's per week. Now they
to be rounded up,
right? But now it's 3,000. They make it 3,000. So now what's happening is that now, of course, they said they're going after people who are, lawbreakers, individuals who are criminals. But overwhelmingly, what's happening is you have individuals who are law abiding.
I was during my vacation, I was in Durham, and I was talking with a friend who is part Mexican, and she was telling me that she and her husband went to a home improvement store, and that people walked up to her and gave her a pamphlet saying, "You need to know your rights. Yes. Here's what you need to do if you get stopped, by ICE." And she's like, "I'm an American citizen. I was born here. I've lived here my whole life." Yeah. But this is a reality that the brown folks in our country are dealing with right now.
Absolutely. I'll give a story here that came out last week. There is not just brown people, but black and brown individuals There's a story that came out. 39-year-old man named Jermaine Thomas. He was raised in the United States, born on the U.S. Army base in Germany. Basically, his father was Jamaican, who served in the military. Mother was Kenyan. His father received citizenship, denounced his Jamaican citizenship, served in the military, the whole nine. He was actually in Texas at his home, trying to leave in his apartment place. A neighbor called the police because he had his dog tied to a pole while he was getting the stuff out the apartment. So this is something just minor, right? But again, this is just minor. So this is just something that normally would be handled. You wouldn't even make the headlines. It's just a quick stop. What ended up happening was he ended up being arrested, and then they checked citizenship, and he ended up becoming transferred over to ICE. And they put him on a plane and deported him back to Jamaica. Now, his father.
But he's not Jamaican. He's American, right?
Right. They deported him to his father's country. Primarily, again, he's born on the military. Now, keep in mind, John McCain was also born on a military base as well, overseas, right? So the late John McCain, of course, he's passed away now. But when he didn't have formal citizenship documents, which triggered the reinstatement of removal orders for this individual, Jermaine Thomas, which, again, if you're born on a military base, you're that is U.S.
That's considered U.S. property, right, because you're born on the military base.
Exactly. So this also brings up an issue of who is actually a citizen, and this is a legal case that, of course, the Trump administration is. Their his Department of Justice now, challenging who is a citizen. Now, of course, in a press conference, he said that, of course, the 14th Amendment was meant for, quote, babies of slaves. All right? That's
what he said.
Right. However, if you read the 14th Amendment, it says all persons born in the United States are citizens, right? Mm-hmm. So it came, of course, we know that those are the 13th, 14th, 15th Amendment, or the, quote unquote, Civil War amendments that basically ended slavery, made Africans who were slaves at the time citizens, and provided black men's suffrage, the right to vote. Right. Of course, all women received the right to vote under the 19th Amendment's women's suffrage. However, it also created due process and equal protection of laws. So with that, those amendments encompass everyone in the country and applies to everyone. What this administration wants to do, they want to redefine it and bring it back to who actually is a quote-unquote citizen. And really, when you take a look at what's happening with this administration, when you take a look at what's happening with the policies of this administration, if you were black, if you were brown, if you were a female, if you were LGBTQ, you're in a position of leadership. If you're anything but a white or male or female, you were removed from that job and replaced with a white male or female. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's just across the board. Mm-hmm. So that's not an opinion. That's just
what has happened.
That's exactly what has happened.
Yeah.
So when you look at the
Joint Chiefs of Staff, right?
The Joint Chiefs of Staff,
the head of VMI.
Absolutely.
I mean, you can point to a variety of positions. Is this? So we talk about constitutional crisis. Mm-hmm. I mean. So does this yet define that that's where we are at this point? Because people keep saying, well, no, we're not quite there yet.
Oh, no, listen, we're there, hands down. We were there some months ago, and it's really at this particular time. You shared with me earlier an article where Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson, Supreme Court Justice, is pretty much was warning everyone and saying how she was her discontent for her fellow justices on the Supreme Court, mm-hmm. and how she just really kind of fed up with how they're interpreting certain things. I mean, we're there, and this is something that just didn't happen overnight. We talked about Project 2025 on previous shows. Last year, I facilitated numerous And also, I held numerous shows on my shows on WNSB about Project 25 and various aspects of it. It's a little bit over 900 pages, and it's what the
Isn't that interesting? Because that's how many pages the Big Beautiful Bill is.
Absolutely.
Too. 900, something about that 900 pages.
Yeah. And see, again, when you take a look at it, it is, it's basically policies that were created, a playbook by contributing over 100 organizations contributed to it across the country, conservative groups, white nationalist groups, white Christian nationalist groups, and various other groups. So they all had a little piece of contributing to it, and we see Voigt, who's in the White House Office of Personnel Management, who also received Russell Voigt, by the way, he received $100 million in funding to the White House Office of Budget Management, quote, for the purposes of finding budget and accounting efficiencies in the executive branch, unquote. Of course, he is the architect of the administration efforts to illegally impound funds. He violates budgetary requirements to spend funds that are duly appropriated by Congress, and he does this under the Impoundment Control Act. Again, taking these very arcane acts from the 1700s and some the 1600s, and saying that we should, 1700s, 1800s, and we could use these in order to control government today.
So the Supreme Court this week also says that, not the Supreme Court, I'm sorry, the IRS says that churches can now endorse candidates without any penalty from the IRS. So is there any more separation of church and state?
Well, again, I mentioned you had conservative groups contribute to this Project 2025. It was under the Heritage Foundation, and you had a little bit over 100 groups, and a lot of the white nationalists or white or nationalist Christian groups were actually a part of that, right? So again, this is nothing that just happened overnight. You had a group of one side of the political sphere and special interest groups that saw the country, going a certain way, black and brown demographics changing and things of that nature. White families aren't having as many babies as they were and things of that nature. So, there was a plan put in place to try to control the arms of and the engines of government in order to control the people. And that's exactly what we're seeing.
Happening.
Matter of fact, to our listeners, you can go to, I think it's Project 2025 Tracker. You can actually shows you.
How many of the things that they've written, how much of the plan has already been implemented?
Absolutely. So if you simply go to project2025.observer, project2025.observer, that's OBSERVER, it's a tracker that shows you the overall progress of various things. And of course, you go to Project 2025, which we've talked about many times on the show, and see exactly what the document is. So it shows you the various areas of what has been completed from that particular area and things of that nature. So
meanwhile, while we're all in turmoil inside the country, then outside the country, the president keeps moving the deadline for the tariffs, and then we bomb Iran.
Yes.
And where are we? What is the international community saying about America at this point? Because I know that's also a real interest of yours.
It is. Barbara, I was telling Lisa the other day, some while ago, I remember a show that we did a while back where I talked about, the changing of the guard in America, in the world.
You did, in the world, and who was going to be the superpower going forward. Yes.
I talked about the start of World War III, where it would start. There were four areas that I thought, 3 geographically and one other where I thought it would start. One, the Middle East, in which you see now, in the Asia Pacific area, in Eastern Europe with Russia and its former blocks of Soviet Union. We know it's Ukraine now. And then cyber. Right, I thought that those would be the areas, and we're there. We do know that right now, the international community is looking away from America because of the instability that they're finding in our government. Now, again, this is the president that the majority in our democracy, civics education, winner takes all. This is our duly sworn in president. period. This is the administration, and we go through the process of back and forth. But now the administration and this particular president and their views of America and internationally how America fits is up and down control from the White House all the way down to the courts. So they have a full deck. They control it all. And with that, you have this isolationism, or that this particular group is looking to make the United States. And again, our unfettered support for the actions of Israel as it relates to Benjamin Netanyahu and the relationship that the president has with him and his son-in-law family, Jared Kushner, has with with Benjamin Netanyahu and his family. So we see a lot of unfortunate and a lot of processes that are being not followed properly. A lot of agreements between individuals that's in the good for them as opposed to the entire country and the like. In the first administration, John Bolton, who was the advisor to the president in the first administration, who was a war hawk, he just wanted to drop a bomb on Iran here. He's been wanting to do that for years. So I remember that planes were sent over to drop a bomb on Iran, and the president, Trump, called them back because, quote, he didn't want to be the one to start World War III. This time they went and they dropped 14, 30,000-pound bombs in another country. They did not, and Congress was livid. They did not let this.
They didn't even let
the
them
Gang
know.
of Eight know.
Right.
And they specifically said that they would let them know if any action were taken. They found out when we found out. I was up in Richmond at the Commonwealth's Gala, and the now nominee for governor was speaking. And I got a buzz on my phone, and I looked at it, and it was breaking news, 9 seconds, and they announced that we had dropped those bombs. And I was sitting with some legislators, and I showed one of them, and it was nobody knew at that time. Everybody was just happy about what was going on. But at that particular moment, I just kind of just sat there and just started looking at what was taking place and how this is going to impact us. You don't drop 14, 30,000-pound bombs on another country and expect them to come to the table and say, let's have coffee and tea and talk about peace. Retribution is coming. It is coming.
And I mean, the thought of America being an isolated place is just not even realistic in today's time. This is not where you had to get on the ship and take, a month to get here. Things are very, very different.
Yes.
And I just wonder how, if people are being smart about the way that they are approaching how they're treating the rest of the world.
No, this administration, absolutely not. We saw what happened just yesterday when they had various African countries here, and he made the statement which is a very rude statement to make. He complimented the leader, the president of Liberia,
and
English.
said, you speak such great English.
And his the shock on his face and other African leaders was just, it's if a picture can speak 1,000 words. But with that, of course, for our listeners, Liberia, of course, was a colony started by freed blacks, freed slaves going back to Africa. So our connection, it was started by abolitionists. So Liberia is
it's an actually English-speaking country.
English-speaking country whose flag is very similar to the United States, and we have a long relationship with the country of Liberia on the west coast of Africa. But
so I have 2 questions. I want to make sure we get to this because we're running out of time, which always makes me crazy when I talk to you. But first of all, so during the Biden administration, clearly the right was working on Project 2025.
Yes.
And they were very deliberate in that.
Absolutely.
Is the Democratic Party working on what it would do if it were to take over in 2026, 2028?
Barbara, I would say, of course, I'm not in all of those meetings and things of that nature, but from my view and conversation I've had, the answer is no. The Democratic Party is very reactionary and a lot of times late to react. But the Republican Party, that I would say the party of Trump, is now their job is very easy. It's simply just to create wedges, right? It's easy to create a wedge. And then when you come back and try to correct a wedge and correct a fallacy, it takes a lot more work, right? However, and of course the Democratic Party is what's called the Big Tent Party. You have a lot of groups that are part of it, but I think the Republican side as well. But there is a uniting force on the Republican side. It's majority white. It's older. It's a lot of the old principles and of the segregationist movement are still in there, and things of that nature. But so it's a big tent, but on the Democratic side. But what this party, I believe, needs to focus on, right now, we are in a people's movement. It's an economic message. The Democratic Party forgot about, the blue collar workers because it was a union party. They forgot about them. They forgot about those individuals in the middle of the country. So they had really nothing else they did have something to gravitate to, but as far as this particular last election cycles, last four, they've gravitated toward the more extreme, saying that, we're here to protect you. And people are going to grab on to what they believe is going to help them when they have no hope. Mm-hmm. So I think the Democratic Party could help themselves by focusing more on economic, people's issues, blue-collar issues, family issues, and the like, as opposed to some have criticized that they're focusing on a minority social issues that divide, that are very diverse in how individuals look at those issues, right, as opposed to the bigger economic picture
absolutely, that affects everybody, regardless of what other subgroup you're a part of.
Absolutely. It's all about economics, and economics will win this election. It'll win the midterm. It'll win the gubernatorial election. It'll win the election in the next 4, 8, and 12 years. The economic message will win that.
So, if at the midterms, mm-hmm, say, for instance, let's just pie in the sky, mm-hmm, and say that the Democratic Party takes over both the House and the Senate, mm-hmm, could they reverse some of the harmful effects of the One Big Beautiful Bill in time? Right. Before the implementation of everything.
Right. So the answer to that question is yes. Right now, the Senate, according to the Hill, was reported on yesterday, on Wednesday, mm-hmm, the Senate is now taking up the Trump Doge cuts. And this is $9 billion cuts to USA aid, and then also $1 billion to Corporation for Public Broadcasting, yes, CPB, which funds NPR and PBS, yes, which WHRO, yes, WHRV is a part of. Yes. So right now there's a lot of, and of course the House passed it already, but the Senate couldn't really deal with it yet because of the One Big Beautiful Bill that they were dealing with. But now they are squarely focused on these particular cuts that have to go forth. So when you not have to go forth, but the White House is saying that they want these done. There's a deadline of July 18th. To approve these $9 billion cuts. And this is where the rubber meets the road. So the White House can, submit what they want to submit. Mm-hmm. They can say, we want this, and then done. But the Congress can say, no, we have the power of the purse strings. We have the power to spend money to appropriate
if
funding.
They would actually do that. And
right,
this is forward funding. And there was an email that was sent out by Paula Kirker, who is the president of PBS, saying, don't stop contacting your senators because the Senate is now taking this up. This is really important.
This is it. And I think that's very important to mention. July 18, we'll see if, this station is part of that $1 billion cut, all public radio, which not only are here in our area, but also, as one Republican congressman in South Dakota says, this is important for native lands as well.
Well, and not only that, but think about what happened in Kerrsville. In Texas, right? And one of the things that the federal dollars are used for is to help public stations do the EAS, the emergency alert system, across the country. And the rural areas in particular are going to need that. Wow.
Yeah. So it was a lot that we talked about.
Exactly. But my last thing, and we got 4 minutes.
Yes.
When are people going to wake up and pay attention? Or do you think they are waking up at this point?
I think persons are afraid. I think I don't think, but they are afraid. There's a lot of trepidation out there. I've worked with our U.S. senators, our U.S. congressmen here, our state delegate and senators, and facilitated multiple town halls for them this year, in this last 6 months. And let me tell you, standing room only, they're turning people away, and persons are coming from wide, areas around Hampton Roads and outside of Hampton Roads, coming to these town halls, which they're exclusively Democratic leaders. But you have individuals who are on the Republican side. They're also coming that are not getting answers from their representatives,
their side. And the independents. We can't forget about those folks who.
You're right. Independents tend to vote Democratic as well. But yeah, you're right. Independents as well are non-party affiliated.
Yeah, non-party affiliated.
But they're coming and they're packed. These town halls are packed. I've not gone to one or facilitate one town hall that's not been packed. I mean,
wow.
Congressman Scott and I I facilitated one of his, and CNN picked it up, showing clips of it and things of that nature. This is, persons are afraid. There's a lot of trepidation, and persons are waiting everyone's saying, wait for the midterms, because a lot of persons that come to a lot of these Democratic town halls are more civically engaged and civically minded and civically educated to understand how government actually works.
So it really is key, though, that we spend this time then educating people on why 2026 matters. I mean, because everybody gets
25 in our state.
25 in our state. Yes,
absolutely,
exactly. Starting in November of this year. Yes, but I mean, everybody gets the whole president thing, but it's the local that we've got to get.
Absolutely. But I will say the Democrats have to come under one voice. They have to galvanize under this economic people's message, like Fred Hampton started back in the day. He brought white farmers together. He brought people from the quote unquote ghetto together. I mean, it was, and he ended up being killed. And some say murdered, by the police at that time, because his movement was so powerful. It's an MLK movement time. It's a JFK, visionary time. It's a Fred Hampton movement time. It is a people's movement because this is a people's government, not an individual government. And that's where we have to start, because this is how it was started. And that's the only way we're going to be able to correct the wrongs and hopefully repair some of the damage that we've had internationally as well.
If people want to hear more, they can check out your show on Sunday. Tell them where they can find you.
Yes, so you can hear me every Sunday on WNSB Hot 91, the Soul of VA. That's 91.1, or our TuneIn app. Just simply put in WNSB 91.1 at 10 a.m. for State of the Water, where we bring movers, shakers, and policymakers to you to discuss issues important to the community for the local, Hampton Roads, and Commonwealth. And at 12:30, the full Claville report, again, on WNSB, where we talk about national and international issues as well, which all started here in 2015.
Eric, as always, thank you so much for your insight. And audience, thank you for the pleasure of your company for the past hour. We hope something we've said gives you food for thought. That is the key. We really just want you to think about what is happening. Stay informed and share the knowledge with others by telling them about our show. You can find the podcast at whro.org/anotherview, on Spotify, or wherever you go for your podcast listening pleasure. Our theme music is an original composition created especially for Another View by Jay Sennett. Lisa Godley is our show producer. Jordan Christie is our audio engineer, and Dr. Barry Graham answered our phones. But you guys were listening today, so I'm Barbara Ham-Lee. Thanks for listening, and let's get together again next Thursday at noon for Another View.
Support comes from Hampton Roads Community Foundation, carrying out your charitable wishes forever, whether it's helping shelter animals, feeding the homeless, enhancing the arts, or supporting students. Learn more at leaveabequest.org.